My name is Elizabeth Jones, and I'm standing in the basement data center of Jones Global Enterprises at 3 in the morning, my hands resting on server racks that hum with the processing power of a company worth $80 billion. The blue LED lights cast shadows across rows of equipment, creating an almost cathedral-like atmosphere in this space that everyone else dismisses as just a basement. If this story hits home, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Every betrayal I share comes with a twist you won't see coming. But here's what nobody upstairs knows. My family was 30 seconds away from authorizing a $10 billion transaction that would bankrupt them, and they had absolutely no idea they needed my signature. They thought I was just the woman who fixed their Wi-Fi. For 6 years, I'd been invisible to them. The IT director who made sure their computers worked, their presentations displayed properly, their networks stayed secure. Elizabeth, the technical one. Elizabeth, who never quite measured up to her brilliant siblings. Elizabeth, whose very existence had cost their mother her life. Have you ever been completely invisible to the people who should know you best? Have you ever watched your own family build empires on your foundation while treating you like you were nothing? Drop a comment if you've ever felt that particular kind of erasure, because what I'm about to tell you will make you reconsider everyone you've ever underestimated. 6 hours from now, my father, Richard Jones, would be presenting the acquisition of a lifetime to our board. My brother, Marcus, would explain his vision with expensive suits and Harvard confidence, gesturing at slides showing projected returns and market dominance. My sister Victoria would add aristocratic polish about strategic positioning and competitive advantages. And somewhere in the back, they'd set up a little table for me, the AV station, where the IT director sits, ready to fix the projector when it inevitably fails, making sure the technology doesn't embarrass them in front of important people. That's who I was to them. Elizabeth, the technical one. Elizabeth, good with computers. Elizabeth, whose mother died giving birth to her 32 years ago. So really, what could they expect from someone who'd started life as a tragedy? But they had no idea what was coming. They didn't know about the quarterly meetings with my grandfather's trust attorney, the careful planning sessions in oak-paneled offices where we discussed timing and strategy, the shadow team I'd assembled over the years, financial forensic accountants, M&A specialists, risk analysts, all preparing for this inevitable moment when preparation would meet opportunity. They didn't know that every server I maintained, every system I secured, gave me something far more valuable than technical skills. Access. Complete, legitimate, documented access to everything. Every email discussing strategy, every financial projection modeling growth, every private conversation about expansion plans and dreams of empire. And they definitely didn't know that the $50 billion they planned to use for this disastrous acquisition belonged entirely to me, not to the company, not to my father, to me. My phone buzzed in the darkness. Board meeting moved up to 9 a.m. Conference room A, ready by 8:30. Conference room A, the executive boardroom, the inner sanctum of power, the place I'd never been invited to sit as anything but tech support, present but invisible, necessary but dismissed. I typed back, "Everything will be ready." 6 years of being dismissed. 6 years watching them make decisions with assets they didn't own and didn't understand. My grandfather Edmund knew exactly what he was doing when he structured his will the way he did. He left the company framework to his children. The prestigious name, the client relationships, the glossy office building in London's financial district. All the things that looked like power. But the actual money? The $50 billion in liquid assets that made Jones Global Enterprises possible? He left that to me. the granddaughter everyone dismissed, the one who loved systems and patterns and understanding how things really worked, not just how they appeared to work. Around me, servers hummed with endless processing. I'd built all this from scratch, saved them $2 billion in potential security breaches. Marcus took credit for improved operational efficiency. Victoria praised strategic technology investments. I fixed the Wi-Fi. That's what they thought. In 5 hours, every assumption they'd made about me, about power, about who controlled this company, would shatter. I ran one final diagnostic. All systems green, all evidence documented, all backup plans ready. Patience, grandfather taught me, wasn't passive. It was strategic. It was waiting for exactly the right moment. That moment was about to arrive. I wasn't always invisible. When I was very young, before the weight of being the one who killed mother settled onto my shoulders, my grandfather Edmund saw something different in me. While father bounced baby Marcus on his knee, talking enthusiastically about my little CEO, grandfather would find me in corners, quietly building elaborate structures with blocks, fascinated by how pieces fit together to create something stable and beautiful. "You see the architecture," he told me when I was 7, kneeling down to examine my work. I'd created a complex pattern of blocks that supported itself through distributed weight, a bridge that shouldn't have worked, but did. "Your brother sees the finished building. You see why it stands up. That's rarer than you know." I didn't understand then. I understand now. My mother died giving birth to me. Eclampsia. Sudden and catastrophic. Father was left with 2 young children and a newborn who'd cost him everything he loved. Nobody ever said it directly, but I could read it in the silence. The way he looked at Marcus and Victoria with warmth, with pride, with uncomplicated love. The way he looked at me was different. Careful, measured. As if he was reminding himself to love me despite the cost. Marcus got Eton. I got comprehensive school. "She's more technical," father explained. Victoria got introduced to business associates at galas. I got programming tutorials. You should have practical skills. At 16, I won the European Young Programmers competition. The ceremony was in Brussels. Father missed it for Marcus's rowing match. 3rd place, regional qualifier. I collected my trophy alone. At 21, Cambridge accepted me. Double major in computer science and mathematics, full scholarship based on merit alone. "Well done," father said at Sunday dinner, barely looking up from his newspaper. "At least you'll be employable. Can't all be CEOs, can we?" Marcus's Harvard Business School graduation the year before had warranted a party with 200 guests, champagne, speeches about his brilliant future. Victoria's engagement to a baronet's son had made the Times social pages. My Cambridge acceptance got mentioned between discussions of the weather and Victoria's wedding seating chart, then forgotten. I spent 4 years at Cambridge being brilliant because I couldn't help it. Systems and patterns and elegant solutions were the only things that made complete sense to me. While Marcus networked his way through business connections and Victoria perfected her social climbing, I completed 2 master's degrees, computer science and financial engineering. 6 years of night classes, weekend study sessions, sacrificing any semblance of a social life. Nobody from my family attended my graduation. There was an important merger father needed to oversee, clients in town who couldn't be disappointed. Marcus absolutely couldn't miss the networking opportunity. "You're coming to work for the family company," father said. "We need someone good with computers." IT director. Not strategy, not operations. I said yes, because grandfather had told me, "In 2 years, everything will make sense." The best place to learn about power is from underneath it. He died 3 months later. Heart attack, sudden and final, collapsing in his study with a book in his hand. The will reading was small and tense, just family and the lawyers in Morrison's office. Father inherited joint control with Aunt Rebecca, who immediately announced she was moving to Monaco and wanted nothing to do with daily operations. Marcus and Victoria were named as future executives with guaranteed positions and generous salaries. I received a small trust fund, enough to be comfortable, but not enough to be truly independent. Your grandfather knew you'd be taken care of by the company, Father explained afterward, his hand briefly on my shoulder. You'll always have a place with us, Elizabeth. Always. What he didn't mention, what nobody in that room knew, was the letter I would receive on my 30th birthday, delivered by grandfather's attorney Morrison, in a moment that would change everything. Elizabeth, you've spent 4 years watching your family run Jones Global. You've seen your brother's aggressive strategies, your sister's focus on appearances, your father's short-term thinking. Here's what they don't know. You own the assets. $50 billion in liquid capital. They believe they own it. They don't. I did this because you understand systems. Your brother sees opportunities. Your sister sees status. Your father sees legacy. You see how things work. Reveal this now or wait. I trust you'll know when the moment is right. Morrison explained the structure. 4 law firms reviewed it. Unassailable. The company could manage assets, but any major restructuring required my authorization. What should I do? Your grandfather understood when to reveal power and when to hold it. The most dangerous chess player appears to have no pieces left. I spent 2 years learning everything. My IT position gave me access to all systems, databases, communications. I tracked every investment, every decision. The pattern: mediocre performance, underperforming benchmarks by 2.8% annually. $8 billion in lost returns. I hired my own team through shell companies. Analysts who found flaws. Risk managers who identified exposures. Specialists who showed me how much better we could do. Nobody knew. I was still just Elizabeth, fixing servers. 3 months ago, Marcus proposed acquiring a tech startup. $15 billion valuation, $10 billion purchase price. Revolutionary AI platform. I ran the numbers. Overvalued by $4 billion. 17 months before desperate capital needs. Marcus was overpaying for a company that would sell for half that if we waited. At dinner, I mentioned their burn rate. He laughed. Stick to computers, Elizabeth. Strategy is beyond your wheelhouse. I smiled while calculating how much rope to give them. 2 weeks ago, Marcus announced the emergency board meeting. Other companies had realized the overvaluation and backed out. I prepared. Not just researching, but preparing for the moment I'd stop being invisible. The moment was now. Board meeting morning. I'd been in since 6 a.m. Conference room A gleamed with expensive furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows, presentation screens, all controlled by systems I'd designed. I set up the AV station, the technical support corner. Perfect positioning to see everything, control everything. Board members arrived. Richard Chin, sharp and analytical. Maria Santos, known for uncomfortable questions. Lord Pemberton, Victoria's father-in-law, then my family. None of them looked at me. Elizabeth, Marcus said without looking at me. Presentation up in 5 minutes. It's ready. The meeting began promptly. Father's opening remarks about company performance. Then Marcus stood, transforming into the person he'd trained his entire life to be. Confident, visionary, certain of his brilliance. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, the market is changing. Our clients want innovation. They want cutting-edge financial technology. He clicked through slides. Market trends, competitor analysis, opportunities. This is why I'm proposing we acquire Tech Venture AI. 15 billion valuation, purchase price 10 billion. Their AI platform will revolutionize how we analyze markets, manage risk, serve clients. Projections appeared. 20-year returns. Market positioning. Competitive advantages. Victoria presented next, outlining merger structure, integration plans, management retention, synergies. She was polished and professional, every word calibrated for impact. Father beamed. This was what he'd raised them for. Then, Richard Chin cleared his throat. Before voting, I'd like to understand the due diligence. 10 billion is substantial. What's our confidence in the valuation? Extensive analysis, Marcus said smoothly. Our models confirm the 15 billion valuation is fair. What models specifically? Maria Santos asked. Proprietary algorithms from our analytics team, Victoria answered. Stress tested against multiple scenarios. From my corner, I spoke quietly. No, they haven't. Every head turned. I'm sorry, Marcus said, voice carrying warning. The algorithms haven't been stress tested. They've been run against bull market data only, not recession scenarios, market corrections, or competitive pressure. Elizabeth, Father said carefully, this is a board meeting. Strategic matters. I'm discussing the accuracy of data being used for a $10 billion decision. Marcus's face reddened. You built the presentation system. That doesn't qualify you to evaluate acquisition strategy. My master's degree in financial engineering from Cambridge qualifies me. My review of Tech Venture's actual financials qualifies me. My analysis showing they're overvalued by 4 billion qualifies me. Complete silence. You have a master's in financial engineering? Richard Chin leaned forward. 2 master's degrees, computer science and financial engineering, completed while working here. 6 years of night classes. Father stared. You never mentioned this? You never asked. You assumed I was just good with computers. This is inappropriate, Victoria said, composure cracking. You work in IT. Stay in your lane. My lane includes understanding systems and algorithms. Those algorithms show something different from your presentation. I connected my tablet to the main screen. My analysis appeared. Tech Venture burns 18 million monthly, 17 months of runway. Their AI isn't unique. 3 competitors developing similar technology cheaper. The 15 billion valuation assumes no competition, perfect execution, continued investor enthusiasm. Realistic valuation, 11 billion. Your 10 billion purchase barely advantageous. Where did you get their financials? Marcus demanded. That's confidential. From the secure server you asked me to set up. I have full administrative access. It's my job. This is corporate espionage. Marcus stood, face red. You've been spying. I've been doing my job, system administration. Father found his voice. Elizabeth, this is enough. You're being disrespectful, disrupting this meeting. Wait outside. Actually, Richard Chin interrupted, I'd like to hear more. What's your confidence level in that analysis? 85% confident they're overvalued. 90% confident we could negotiate $8 billion if we wait 6 months. This is absurd, Victoria said. Father, she needs to leave immediately. I agree, Marcus said. You're suspended. Leave the building. I stood slowly. You can't suspend me. I'm COO. I absolutely can suspend an insubordinate employee. You can suspend an employee. You cannot suspend the owner. Silence. Heavy. What did you say? Father's voice was very quiet. The door opened. James Morrison, my grandfather's attorney, stepped into the room carrying his familiar leather briefcase. "Good morning," he said pleasantly. "I apologize for the intrusion, but I believe this board is about to vote on a transaction that requires authorization from the legal owner of the assets being deployed." "Richard Jones is the owner," Marcus said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "This is his company." "Mr. Jones owns the company structure," Morrison agreed, setting his briefcase on the table. "The corporate entity, the brand, the client relationships. But the assets themselves, the $50 billion in capital that makes this company functional, those have a different owner." He pulled out a document and placed it in front of my father. "This is Sir Edmund Jones's Asset Allocation Trust, established 14 years ago and executed upon Miss Elizabeth Jones's 30th birthday. It transferred ownership of all liquid assets currently managed by Jones Global Enterprises to his granddaughter. Complete ownership, irrevocable trust, legally unassailable." Father stared at the document. Marcus grabbed it from his hands, scanning frantically. Victoria had gone completely pale. "This is impossible," Marcus said. "Dad left the company to us. There was a will. We were there. He left the company structure to his children," Morrison said patiently. "The business entity remains under Richard Jones's control as CEO. But the capital the company manages, all $50 billion, belongs to Elizabeth Jones. She has allowed you to continue management, but any major restructuring requires her explicit authorization as the legal owner." "I don't authorize this acquisition," I said clearly. "I reject the proposal as presented." The room exploded. Marcus shouting something about fraud and betrayal. Victoria on her phone, presumably calling lawyers. Father still staring at the trust document like it was written in a foreign language. Lord Pemberton was the first board member to speak. "Morrison, I assume this has been legally verified? 4 separate law firms reviewed this trust. It's unassailable." Richard Chin was looking at me with something like respect. "Elizabeth, you've known about this for how long?" 2 years, since my 30th birthday." 2 years, Father repeated hoarsely. "You've known for 2 years that you owned, that you controlled everything?" "I own the assets. You control the company structure. Both things are true." "You've been lying to us." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "Pretending to be IT support while spying on everything we did." "I never lied. I am IT support. I also happen to own the $50 billion you're attempting to spend without my authorization." Maria Santos spoke up, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Perhaps we should all take a breath. Elizabeth, you're declining to authorize this acquisition. Do you have specific concerns beyond the valuation?" "Multiple concerns. The valuation issues I've outlined, the risk profile that Marcus's presentation glossed over, and the broader pattern of underperformance in how my assets have been managed." "Underperformance?" Victoria's voice was sharp. "We've delivered consistent returns for 6 years. You've delivered 4.1% average annual returns," I said. "The market benchmark for comparable portfolios is 6.9%. You've underperformed by 2.8% annually, which across $50 billion represents approximately $8.7 billion in lost potential returns over 6 years. Richard Chin was checking his tablet. "She's right. I've been reviewing the performance data. Good in absolute terms, mediocre relative to market performance." "And now," I continued, "you want to spend $10 billion of my dollars on an overvalued acquisition, driven more by my brother's desire to be featured in the Financial Times than by sound strategic analysis." Marcus lunged toward me. Father caught his arm. "This is betrayal," Marcus said, his voice shaking. We're family. We've run this company together. And you've been undermining us? No, I said. I've been monitoring how you managed my assets. There's a difference. We're going to fight this, Victoria said, finding her voice. We'll challenge the trust. We'll prove Father's mental incapacity when he created it. Something. You'll lose, Morrison said simply. Sir Edmund had this trust reviewed precisely to prevent such challenges. It's ironclad. Then we'll vote to terminate Elizabeth's ownership somehow, Marcus said desperately. You can't vote away legal ownership, Richard Chin said, still reading the trust document. This isn't a matter of corporate governance. It's a matter of legal title. And according to this, Elizabeth has clear, uncontestable title to the assets. Father finally spoke, his voice hollow. My father did this. He gave the company to me, but the assets to Elizabeth. He wanted someone who understood systems, I said, meeting his eyes. Not just financial systems. All systems. How power actually works, not just how it appears to work. And you've been studying us, Victoria said, understanding dawning. For 2 years. Watching every decision. Learning everything. Yes. While pretending to be just the IT person. I am the IT person. I'm also the owner. I'm both. The board members were looking at each other, calculating implications, considering positions. This was the kind of power shift that redefined everything. Maria Santos spoke carefully. Elizabeth, what are your intentions? Do you plan to continue the current management structure or make changes? Everyone looked at me. The invisible one. The one they'd dismissed for 32 years. The one who'd been waiting patiently for exactly this moment. I plan to make significant changes, I said, starting with a complete forensic audit of all investment decisions made over the last 6 years. I want to understand exactly how my assets have been deployed and where improvements are needed. That could take months, Father said. Then it takes months. The audit begins next week. I've already engaged an external firm. You've already? Marcus's voice cracked. You've been planning this, all of it. I've been preparing for the possibility that I'd need to take a more active role in managing my assets. Today's proposal made that possibility a certainty. Richard Chin leaned back in his chair. I move we table the tech venture acquisition pending substantial redesign and additional due diligence. Seconded, said Maria Santos. All in favor? 8 hands went up. Only my father, brother, and sister abstained. Motion passes. This meeting is adjourned. The board members began gathering their things, several already on phones, presumably reporting this development to their firms and contacts. Victoria stopped beside my chair. Her elegant composure was shattered, replaced by something raw and hurt. I don't know what to say to you, she whispered. You don't have to say anything. I should have asked about your degrees, about what you were capable of. I just assumed that I was just good with computers. I know. Everyone did. She left without another word. Marcus didn't even look at me. He grabbed his materials and stormed out, humiliation and rage radiating from every movement. Eventually, only Father and I remained in the conference room. He sat at the head of the table, the trust document still in front of him, looking older than he had an hour ago. Your grandfather always said you were like him, he said finally. Quiet, observant, patient. I thought he meant you were introverted. I didn't realize he meant you were strategic. He taught me to wait for the right moment. And this was it. Humiliating your brother and sister in front of the board. This was stopping them from gambling $10 billion of my dollars on faulty analysis. The humiliation was their own creation. We sat in silence. Through the windows, London continued its day, unaware that in this room, everything had changed. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we decide whether we can work together to properly manage my assets or whether I need to hire new management." "You'd fire your own family." "I'd fire poor managers, family or not." He stood slowly, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time in 32 years. Maybe he was. "I built this company," he said. "Your grandfather and I built it together. You built the company's structure, the client relationships, the reputation. Those things have value, and they're yours. But the assets you've been managing belong to me. They always have. Because my father didn't trust me to own them." I didn't answer. We both knew it was true. He left without another word, leaving me alone in the conference room where I'd finally stopped being invisible. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard Chin. That took courage. "Let's schedule time next week to discuss the audit framework. I think you'll find you have more allies on this board than you expected." Another from Maria Santos. "Your grandfather would be proud." And one from Morrison. "Well executed, Miss Jones. Your grandfather trained you well." I gathered my tablet and headed for the door. Tomorrow, I'd move into a proper office upstairs. Tomorrow, the audit would begin. Tomorrow, I'd start actually managing my assets instead of just monitoring them from the shadows. But tonight, I had one more night in the server room. One more night of being just the IT person. One more night before everything changed forever. I took the stairs down to the basement, to my corner of humming servers and blinking lights, and allowed myself a small smile. Patience, my grandfather had taught me, wasn't passive. It was strategic. And I'd just proven him right. The next morning, I found a note taped to the server room door in Jennifer from HR's handwriting. "Elizabeth, please come to the executive floor. We've prepared an office for you." I climbed the 5 flights of stairs, my laptop bag over my shoulder, feeling the weight of what I'd done settling into reality. This wasn't just about one board meeting anymore. This was about fundamentally restructuring everything. Jennifer waited nervously in the hallway outside a corner office. "We converted this space overnight," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Mr. Chin called at 6 this morning with specific instructions. Windows, proper furniture, everything you might need." The office was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Thames. A mahogany desk that probably cost more than a year of my previous salary. Leather chairs. Abstract art on the walls. All the visual markers of executive power. "Thank you, Jennifer," I said. She hesitated. "Miss Jones, I should tell you. Mr. Marcus and Miss Victoria both submitted resignation letters last night, effective immediately." I set my laptop bag down carefully. Both of them. Yes, Mr. Marcus's was brief, just 2 sentences. Miss Victoria's was longer. She said she couldn't work for her younger sister, that it would be too uncomfortable given family history. "I see. And my father?" "Mr. Richard came in this morning at 7. He's in his office. He asked that you meet with him when you're settled." After Jennifer left, I stood at the window, looking out at London's financial district. Somewhere down there, my brother and sister were figuring out what came next. Somewhere, my father was confronting what he'd missed for 32 years, and I was here, in a corner office that represented everything they'd assumed I couldn't achieve. My phone rang. Father's extension. "Elizabeth, could you come to my office?" I found him sitting at his desk, staring at a photograph on the wall. The image showed him and my grandfather, both younger, standing in front of the original Jones Global Enterprises storefront. Before the billions. Before the empire. When it was just 2 men with a vision. "Marcus and Victoria quit," he said without preamble. They're humiliated, angry. Marcus is already talking to lawyers about challenging the trust, though Morrison assures me it's pointless. It is pointless. He turned to face me. I've spent 30 years building this company, teaching your brother and sister how to manage money, how to court clients, how to build relationships in this industry. And it turns out none of it mattered because the assets were never mine to begin with. The company is still yours, I said. The infrastructure, the client relationships, the brand, what you built with grandfather has tremendous value. Value that depends on the $50 billion you control. Yes. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, your grandfather was right about me. I'm a good manager, but a poor owner. I'm too cautious when I should be bold, too bold when I should be cautious. I let Marcus push me into proposals I should have questioned. I let Victoria's confidence override my concerns. You've kept the company stable for 6 years. That's not nothing. It's not enough. Not for someone managing $50 billion in assets. He looked at me directly. What do you need from me, Elizabeth? Do you want me to stay? To resign? To transition to some advisory role? I'd spent all night thinking about this question, about what came next, about whether revenge or rebuilding mattered more. I want you to do what you do best, I said. Manage client relationships. Maintain the company's reputation. Keep the business infrastructure running smoothly. But I'm bringing in new people for portfolio management. People who understand modern markets, algorithmic trading, risk modeling. And Marcus's acquisition? Dead as proposed. But I'm not opposed to innovation. I'm opposed to recklessness disguised as vision. What about me? His voice was quiet. Where do I fit in this new structure? You're CEO of Jones Global Enterprises. That doesn't change. But investment decisions for my portfolio go through me now, and through the team I'm building. So I run the company, but you control the assets. Yes, he nodded slowly. Your grandfather's plan. Keep the family involved in management, but ensure the assets are protected from our mistakes. Something like that? I hate that he was right. There was no heat in his voice, just tired resignation. I hate that he saw my weaknesses so clearly that he planned around them even after death. He loved you. He just didn't trust you with money. Those two things are more compatible than they should be. Father stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city he'd spent decades conquering, only to discover he'd never really owned what mattered most. I'll stay, he said finally, if you want me to. I'm good at what I do, even if what I do isn't what I thought it was. I want you to stay. And Marcus and Victoria? If they can accept the new structure? They're welcome to return. If they can't, I'll hire replacements. They won't come back. Too proud. Too angry. He turned to face me. You humiliated them in front of the board. I stopped them from losing $10 billion. They humiliated themselves by presenting analysis they hadn't properly vetted. That's not how they'll remember it. I know. We stood in silence. Then Father said something that surprised me. Your grandfather used to say the most powerful person in the room is usually the one everyone underestimates. I never understood what he meant. Information asymmetry, I said. Being underestimated means people are careless around you. They reveal things they wouldn't reveal to someone they perceived as threatening. And you've been using that advantage for 2 years. Yes. That's terrifying, Elizabeth. The idea that someone has been watching everything, knowing everything, planning everything. I wasn't planning to take over. I was preparing for the possibility that I'd need to intervene. Is there a difference? Yes. One is opportunistic. The other is strategic. Father shook his head slowly. You're more like him than I ever was. Your grandfather. The way you think. The way you plan. Too much, maybe. Is that a compliment? I honestly don't know. He returned to his desk, picked up the photograph, studied it. I'll send an email to staff this afternoon, announcing organizational changes, introducing you as active management. People will have questions. Let them ask. And the board? Richard Chin and Maria Santos are already supportive. The others will follow once they see the audit results. You're very confident. I'm very prepared. There's a difference. He almost smiled. Your grandfather's words exactly. Over the next 4 months, I systematically dismantled and rebuilt how my assets were managed. The forensic audit I'd commissioned revealed exactly what I'd suspected. Years of mediocre decisions, unnecessary risks, missed opportunities. I hired 6 new analysts, all brilliant, all hungry to prove themselves. 2 portfolio managers with track records that actually matched their confidence. A chief risk officer who'd predicted the last 3 market corrections. I moved permanently into the corner office but spent time in the server room too. Old habits. And besides, the new IT director I'd hired needed training on systems I'd built. Marcus never came back. I heard through industry contacts that he'd taken a position at a competing firm, immediately started working on plans to poach our clients. His innovation fund proposal was rejected there too. Within 6 months, he was fired for poor performance. His aggressive style, it turned out, only worked when he had family money as a safety net. Victoria returned after 2 months. She appeared in my office doorway one morning, perfectly dressed as always, but with something defeated in her posture. I owe you an apology, she said stiffly. I was unprofessional at the board meeting. I said things about you that were untrue and unkind. Apology accepted. Is there still a place for me here? I considered her. Victoria was intelligent, well-connected, excellent with clients, just not someone who should be making investment decisions. Client relations, I said. You're better with people than numbers. Use that. Not CFO? Not CFO. I've hired someone else for that position, but head of client relations is crucial. Interested? She nodded, something like relief crossing her face. Yes. Thank you. Victoria, the apology is appreciated. But if you stay, you need to understand something. I'm not your little sister anymore. I'm the owner. That dynamic doesn't change just because we're related. I understand. She didn't, not really. But she would learn. Or she wouldn't, and she'd leave again. Either way, I'd be fine. Father and I met weekly to review performance and strategy. The meetings were professional, increasingly productive, though they never quite lost their underlying tension. How could they? Everything had changed, but slowly, carefully, we built something new. Not the family dynamic he'd wanted, not the legacy he'd imagined, but something functional, something that worked. The audit results confirmed everything: mediocre performance, high-risk positions without proper hedging, a tendency to follow market trends rather than anticipate them. We fixed it. I brought in algorithmic trading systems I'd been developing privately, restructured the portfolio with proper diversification, implemented risk management protocols that actually made sense. Within 6 months, the $50 billion portfolio had grown to $54 billion. Within a year, $61 billion. Industry journals started asking questions. How had Jones Global Enterprises transformed so dramatically? What had changed? The answer was simple. Someone who understood systems had started running them. 1 year after the board meeting, I sat in my corner office reviewing quarterly results when Father knocked on my door. Got a minute? Always. He sat across from me, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. Just got off the phone with Richard Chin. The board is unanimously impressed with the portfolio's performance. They're proposing to expand your authority. To what? Oversight of all company investments, not just your personal portfolio. They want you managing Jones Global Enterprises' complete investment strategy. Company assets, client portfolios, everything. I set down my pen. That's a significant expansion. It is. It also means you'd effectively control the entire company, not just your grandfather's assets. How do you feel about that? He considered carefully. 6 months ago, I would have hated it, seen it as final proof that I'd failed at everything my father built. Now, he paused. Now I see someone doing what needs to be done, making the company stronger, more stable, more successful than I ever managed. Father, let me finish. I'm not good at this, but I need to say it. I'm sorry for treating you like you didn't matter, for assuming you'd failed just because you weren't following the path I expected, for not seeing what you were capable of until you forced me to see it. Thank you. Your grandfather would be proud. I hope so. I know so. I'm proud too, even if I'm also slightly terrified of you. I smiled. You should be. I have access to all your emails. Because you're IT support. Because I have access to everything. He stood to leave, then paused. Your brother called me last night. He's struggling at his new firm, having trouble getting clients to take him seriously. He wanted advice. What did you tell him? I told him to be patient, to learn, to understand that real power doesn't announce itself. It waits for the right moment. Father looked back at me. Your grandfather's advice seemed appropriate? After he left, I sat at my desk looking out at London's skyline. 3 years in the server room, 1 year in the corner office, and finally, everything was exactly where it needed to be. My phone buzzed. The new CIO. Network infrastructure audit complete. Everything running perfectly. Almost like someone spent years maintaining it properly. I smiled and typed back, old habits die hard. 18 months after the board meeting that changed everything, I stood in front of 500 financial industry professionals at the European Investment Summit in Geneva. The keynote speech slot, the one usually reserved for legendary investors or celebrated economists. They'd asked me to talk about Jones Global Enterprises' transformation, about how we'd gone from mediocre performance to industry-leading returns, about innovation and strategy and vision. Instead, I talked about something else. The most valuable thing my grandfather taught me wasn't about money, I began, looking out at the sea of expensive suits and interested faces. It was about patience, about observation, about understanding that being underestimated is temporary power, if you're wise enough to wait for the right moment. I saw some confused expressions. This wasn't the speech they'd expected. Some people think I got lucky, that I inherited $50 billion and happened to be good at managing it. But here's what actually happened. I spent 6 years preparing. 6 years learning every system, studying every decision, building expertise while everyone assumed I was just good with computers. That's not luck. That's strategy. A pause. Let it land. And to everyone who's ever been treated as just something, just tech support, just administrative, just whatever diminishes you, remember this. Information is power. Access is power. And the people who underestimate you give you both. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, dozens of people wanted to talk. Women, mostly, who'd been dismissed in their own careers, who understood exactly what I meant. But the person I noticed most was standing at the back of the room. Marcus, my brother, looking older than his 37 years, his expensive suit somehow sitting wrong on shoulders that had learned to carry defeat. We hadn't spoken in 18 months, not since the board meeting. After the crowd thinned, he approached carefully. Elizabeth. Marcus. That was a good speech. Honest. Thank you. We stood in awkward silence. Then he said, I've been thinking about what you said, about preparation versus luck. You're right. I thought I was brilliant because things came easily. I never learned to actually work for anything. Is this an apology? It's an acknowledgement. I was terrible to you for years. I dismissed you, belittled you, treated you like you were less than because that's what I'd been taught to believe. By father. By everyone. The whole system. You were the girl. The one who cost mother her life. The one who should be grateful for whatever scraps we gave you. I waited. Let him finish. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Marcus continued. I'm just saying I finally understand what grandfather saw. You're better at this than I ever was. You deserve that money. I didn't. It wasn't about deserving. It was about understanding systems, which is what I never bothered to learn. He smiled bitterly. I'm working in Manchester now, small investment firm. They hired me despite my reputation because they needed someone who understood wealthy clients. I'm good at that part, the schmoozing, just not the actual investing. That's honest. It's humbling. He shifted his weight. Anyway, I just wanted to say I saw what you built. 65 billion now, right? That's what the journals are reporting. 67 as of yesterday's close. 17 billion in growth in 18 months. That's extraordinary. It's what happens when decisions are based on data instead of ego. He winced. Yeah, I deserve that. Marcus turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, Elizabeth, I'm sorry. For everything. After he left, I stood alone in the empty conference hall, feeling something unexpected. Not quite forgiveness, not quite satisfaction. Something more complex, something like closure. My phone buzzed. Victoria, texting from London. Saw your speech online. Brilliant. Client dinner tonight went perfectly. Closed the Henderson account? Might actually be good at this client relations thing. Then father. Well done, Elizabeth. Your grandfather would have loved that speech. So did I. And finally, someone I hadn't expected. A blocked number, message simple. You were always his favorite. Now I know why. Be well, little sister. Aunt Rebecca. The aunt who'd fled to Monaco the moment grandfather died, wanting nothing to do with the family business. She'd been watching all along. Back in London the next day, I walked through Jones Global Enterprises with new eyes. The building looked the same from outside, but everything inside had transformed. The IT department, once just me and one aging director, now had 12 people, half of them women, all of them brilliant. The investment team, once dominated by Oxbridge men in identical suits, now looked like London itself. Diverse, young, hungry, brilliant in ways that had nothing to do with where they went to school. The culture had changed too. People asked questions now, challenged assumptions. Nobody got dismissed for being too technical or not strategic enough. I stopped by the server room where Thomas, the new CIO I'd hired, was reviewing security protocols. Ms. Jones, he said, looking up in surprise. Everything okay? Just checking in. Old habits. He smiled. The new hires are working out well. Sarah, especially. Her algorithm optimization is extraordinary. She's brilliant. Cambridge graduate, top of her class, but couldn't get hired anywhere because she's in a wheelchair. Their loss, our gain. You have a gift for finding people everyone else overlooks. No, I said. I have experience being overlooked. It's different. That evening, I attended mandatory family dinner, a tradition Father had insisted on maintaining despite everything. Victoria was there, chatting about client relationships and social media strategies. Father asked about the Geneva speech. Marcus's chair sat empty. He'd been invited, as always. He never came. Elizabeth, Father said during dessert, the board wants to make an announcement next week. They're promoting you to Chief Investment Officer. Officially, full authority over all company investment operations. I already have that authority. But not the title. Titles matter. Recognition matters. I thought about all the years I'd worked without recognition, without titles, without anyone caring what I accomplished. Fine, I said. Announce it. Victoria raised her wine glass. To my little sister, the most terrifying person I know. I laughed. I'm not terrifying. You absolutely are, Father said, but in the best possible way. After dinner, I drove to the cemetery where my grandfather was buried. I hadn't been there since the funeral, but tonight felt right. His headstone was simple. Sir Edmund Jones, builder, teacher, strategist. I sat on the bench nearby and pulled out the letter he'd written me. I'd read it 1,000 times, but tonight I read it again. You understand that true power comes from understanding how systems work, not just how they appear to work. You were right, grandfather, I said aloud to the empty cemetery. About all of it. About Father being a good manager but poor owner. About Marcus being reckless. About Victoria being brilliant but impatient. And about me. The wind rustled through trees. No answer, of course, but I felt something like peace. I'm running it now, the way you would have, with patience, with strategy, with understanding of how things actually work. I stood to leave, then noticed something, a fresh bouquet at the grave. Recent, within the last day. The card read, "Still learning from you, Dad. Still trying. Richard." My father had been here, probably this morning before I arrived. We were all still learning, still trying, still figuring out what family meant when everything you'd assumed about it turned out to be wrong. 6 months later, Jones Global Enterprises announced record returns. $72 billion in assets under management. Industry-leading performance across every metric. Client satisfaction at all-time highs. The financial press wanted interviews. They wanted to know my secret. How had a 33-year-old woman transformed a respectable but mediocre firm into an industry powerhouse? I gave one interview, just one, to the Financial Times. The secret, I told the reporter, is that there is no secret. It's understanding systems. It's making decisions based on data, not ego. It's hiring brilliant people regardless of whether they fit traditional expectations, and it's having the patience to wait for the right moment to act. Some say you got lucky inheriting $50 billion. Luck is what people call preparation meeting opportunity. I prepared for 6 years. The opportunity came when my family tried to make a $10 billion mistake. That's not luck. That's inevitable. The article ran with the headline, "The Patient Strategist: How Elizabeth Jones Rebuilt Her Family's Empire." My favorite part was the quote from Richard Chin. "Miss Jones is the smartest investor I've worked with in 40 years. She sees patterns others miss because she understands the infrastructure beneath the market. That's what happens when you hire someone who knows how systems actually work." A year later, Forbes included me in their 30 Under 35 issue. The cover story called me the underestimated heiress who revolutionized family wealth management. I framed it, not for me, for every person who'd ever been dismissed, underestimated, told they were just something diminutive. 3 years after the board meeting, I attended my grandfather's birthday. He would have been 95. Father had suggested we mark the occasion with a small gathering at the original Jones Global Enterprises storefront, now a memorial office we maintained. Victoria brought wine, Father brought stories, and surprisingly, Marcus showed up. "Thought you wouldn't come," I said when he arrived. "Almost didn't, but then I thought Grandfather would have wanted all of us here." We stood in the small office where it had all begun, where my grandfather had started with nothing and built everything. "He knew exactly what he was doing," Father said quietly, looking at old photographs on the wall. "Splitting ownership from management, putting Elizabeth in position to observe for years before acting, creating the perfect conditions for transformation." "He was teaching me," I said. "Through all of it. Even after death. Teaching all of us," Victoria added. "Some lessons just took longer to learn than others." Marcus raised his glass. "To Edmund Jones, who saw what the rest of us missed, and to Elizabeth, who proved him right." We drank to that. Later, walking back to my car, Father caught up with me. "Elizabeth, I've been thinking about retirement. You're 68. That's not unreasonable. Not full retirement, but stepping back. You don't need me running interference anymore. You've built your own authority, your own reputation. What would you do?" He smiled. "Remember how Grandfather used to mentor young entrepreneurs? I thought I might do something similar, teaching people what I've learned, including what I learned by getting it wrong for so long." "That would be good. You're better as a teacher than as a manager." High praise from the woman who surpassed everything I ever accomplished. Different accomplishments. Yours mattered too. We stood by our cars in the fading London light. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I should have said that more. I should have seen you more clearly, but I'm saying it now. Your mother would be proud too." It was the first time he'd mentioned my mother in years. "Thank you," I said, surprised by the emotion in my voice. "You didn't just inherit money, Elizabeth. You inherited your grandfather's gift for understanding people, for seeing systems, for knowing when to wait and when to act. That's worth more than $50 billion. $78 billion now, actually." He laughed. "Of course it is." I drove home through London traffic, thinking about everything that had changed, about the girl who'd fixed computers in basements, about the woman who now ran one of Europe's most successful investment firms, about family and what it meant when everything you'd built together had been constructed on false assumptions, about power and how it looked different than people expected, about justice and how sometimes it came not from punishment, but from simply being excellent at what you did. My apartment overlooked the Thames. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, walls lined with servers because some habits never die. I made tea and opened my laptop. Tomorrow there were meetings, strategy sessions, client presentations. The normal work of managing $78 billion. But tonight, I pulled up the letter one more time. My grandfather's words, written years before I'd understand them. "You understand that true power comes from understanding how systems work, not just how they appear to work. The company needs someone who sees the machinery behind the curtain. I believe that person is you." He'd been right about all of it. I was the person who saw the machinery, who understood the systems, who had the patience to wait for exactly the right moment. And when that moment came, I'd been ready. My phone buzzed. A notification from the company's automated trading systems. Portfolio rebalancing complete. Another 0.2% gain across global markets. Even while I slept, the systems I'd built kept working. Keep growing. Kept proving that being underestimated was the best camouflage for becoming unstoppable. I closed the laptop and looked out at London's lights. Tomorrow, I'd keep building, keep innovating, keep proving that the quiet ones, the technical ones, the ones everyone dismisses, sometimes turn out to be the most dangerous players in the game. But tonight, I just smiled. Because the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's proving yourself right. And I'd done exactly that. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, drop a comment below. Share your story. And remember, the people who dismiss you are giving you the greatest gift possible, the element of surprise. Use it wisely. Subscribe for more stories about justice, power reversals, and why you should never, ever underestimate the quiet ones.